about one announcement, one overseas trip, or one carefully managed headline. It is about a much bigger question that keeps returning again and again. Did Prince Harry ever fully leave the royal system, or has he remained close enough to the institution to keep benefiting from its protection, its networks, and its global soft power? That is the question running underneath the Invictus announcements. The reports about private meetings with King Charles, the claims about palace-approved rehabilitation, and even the debate over the King's public role as defender of the faith. On the surface, these stories may look separate. Prince Harry and Invictus in South Korea, Princess Anne in South Korea, King Charles at an eco-friendly mosque in Cambridge, royal commentators discussing a so-called thaw with the Sussexes, Rob Shooter weighing in from New York on how the press builds narratives. But when you put them together, they form a picture of a monarchy trying to manage several difficult realities at once. It has a king who still wants to be seen as a unifying figure. It has a son in California who is outside the working royal family but still carries royal status. It has a future King, Prince William, who appears much less willing to blur the boundaries.
You are being lied to. This is the show that the palace and the establishment don't want you watching, because I am going to lift up the veil and show you evidence and proof of exactly what is going on. Harry never left the royal family. He's still protected. And I would argue the king has been masterminding his return the entire time.
And it has a public that is increasingly suspicious whenever Prince Harry appears to receive the advantages of royal proximity without the responsibilities that usually come with it. The most important starting point is the royal website. That may sound like a small technical detail, but symbolically it matters. Prince Harry and Meghan are no longer working royals, yet their names and titles still exist inside the official royal ecosystem. Critics argue that as long as Harry remains presented in that space, many people around the world will continue to see him as connected to the institution, even if he is not carrying out formal duties for the crown. That matters because the royal family is not just a family, it is also an international brand, a diplomatic tool, and a soft power machine. When someone appears to be part of that machine, doors open. Meetings become easier, governments take calls, charities gain attention, international organizations understand that the name still carries weight. Supporters of Harry would say that Invictus has always been his own project and that his work with veterans deserves to stand on its own. Critics push back and say Invictus works in part because it is wrapped in royal legitimacy. Without the royal title, without the palace-adjacent aura, without the long public memory of Prince Harry in uniform standing beside veterans, the platform would not carry the same force. That is why the Invictus Games announcement about South Korea has attracted so much commentary. The source material argues that it is not a coincidence that Princess Anne was publicly connected with South Korea shortly before news emerged that South Korea would host the Invictus Games in 2029. The point being made is not that Princess Anne personally arranged anything, or that she necessarily had knowledge of Harry's plans. The argument is that royal travel, diplomatic priorities, and international announcements often work within long timelines. These schedules are not usually thrown together in a few days. They are planned through governments, embassies, security teams, charities, foundations, and palace offices. So when a senior royal figure is engaged with a country and a major Harry-linked project then announces a future event in that same country, some commentators see a pattern rather than coincidence.
And over this royal bombshell, you are going to know exactly why and how the royal family are backing Prince Harry. He has protection at the highest possible level, because when you are on the royal website, you are a very useful soft power asset. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's not useful. I know that, you know that, but sadly there are many people around the world that still think he's part of the royal family.
They believe Harry's work continues to move in the same diplomatic lanes as the royal family's wider soft power strategy. The Birmingham Invictus decision is used as the earlier example. Invictus 2027 will be held in Birmingham after a bid that had also been connected with Washington, D.C. The original discussion points to the government funding attached to the event, including the figure of £26.6 million, first approved under the Conservative government and then carried forward under Labour.
Critics ask why such a large amount of public money is tied to an event so closely associated with Prince Harry when veterans themselves face serious challenges in housing, healthcare, and long-term support.
Supporters would argue that Invictus brings attention, dignity, adaptive sport, and a global platform to wounded and injured service personnel. But critics see a different story. They see a struggling city, a politically useful spectacle, and a prince who can return to Britain under the emotionally powerful banner of veterans while avoiding the harder question of whether he should be allowed any form of quasi-royal role. The Birmingham decision also raises the issue of networks. The source material mentions Lord Charles Allen and his role on the Invictus board, as well as his past links to Labour and government-adjacent work. The argument being made is that this was never simply a matter of one communications advisor arranging a few good press hits for Harry. Liam Maguire is named in the original conversation as someone associated with Harry's recent communications strategy, but critics say it is unrealistic to imagine that one advisor could place Harry inside a series of international moments without support from a much bigger system. Over the past year, Harry has been linked with visits and appearances involving Jordan, Australia, Ukraine, and major global or security-related discussions. Each one of those settings involves logistics, protection, political sensitivity, and diplomatic permissions. That is the center of the claim. Harry may no longer be a working royal, but his public life still appears to move through doors that are not usually available to private citizens. The Jordan example is used because it placed Harry and Meghan in a humanitarian and international health context, including a roundtable connected with the World Health Organization. Critics argue that this moved them away from charity and into politics. The Australia example is used because the trip was criticized by some commentators as a carefully staged public relations exercise, especially around sensitive settings and emotional causes. Ukraine is perhaps the sharpest contrast of all.
No, the mind boggles. I want to take you back to Invictus 2027, which I know sounds strange because we haven't had it yet. But don't forget, the Conservative government gave Harry and Invictus £26.6 million. I mean, could you imagine? How many veterans could we house and support for decades with that money? But no, that wouldn't get the PR, would it, for the government and Harry? Now, this grant is being...
Harry has repeatedly argued that his security concerns make returning to the United Kingdom difficult. Yet critics point out that he has been willing to travel to a country at war. That does not mean the security circumstances are identical, and it does not prove hypocrisy by itself. But politically, the optics are difficult. When a prince says Britain is unsafe without a certain level of protection, then appears in far more dangerous environments under a different framework, the public naturally asks what the security argument is really about. Ukraine also matters because King Charles and the British government have made Ukraine a major diplomatic priority. The King has met President Zelensky several times, and the United Kingdom has been one of Ukraine's strongest backers. So when Harry appears in that sphere, some critics see him not as a private humanitarian figure, but as someone moving along the same tracks as British soft power. Again, this does not require a formal announcement from the palace. Royal influence often works through atmosphere, access, and implication. If a prince is still a prince, if he is still described with titles, and if his project still receives government support, then his presence can send a message even when the palace insists he is acting independently. The same pattern appears in the discussion of Meghan's advocacy around online safety and children. The original source sharply criticizes Meghan for speaking about the dangers of social media while also using family imagery and digital platforms to support her own public profile. A more careful way to frame it is this. Critics believe the Sussexes have found causes that give them global relevance, but they are not always consistent in how they live those causes. Online safety, child protection, misinformation, and censorship are all serious subjects. They also sit very close to political debate, especially in Britain, where the online safety bill has created arguments about freedom of speech, platform regulation, and government power. When Harry and Meghan step into those debates, they are no longer simply doing harmless charity work. They are entering contested political territory while still using royal titles. That is why critics say the palace cannot pretend this is completely separate from the monarchy. People magazine and other friendly outlets are then part of the wider media ecosystem.
Now, I had people reach out to me, okay, and they said, hang on. Did Anne know about this? How could Harry have quickly arranged a news release about Invictus being held in South Korea? This is what you need to know. The royal family are used as soft power assets for diplomacy all around the world. If you look, and followers of the royal grift will be super savvy on this point.
When the announcement came that Invictus would head to Asia for the first time, the coverage naturally emphasized the milestone. That is how positive public relations works. You highlight expansion, history, inclusion, global growth, and the emotional mission of the Games. But critics see the coverage as a soft focus shield around Harry. They argue that the sympathetic reporting avoids the more uncomfortable questions. Who benefits from the money? Who coordinates the access? What role does the royal brand play? And why does Harry continue to receive such careful handling after years of public attacks on his own family? That is the tension. Invictus itself may be admirable, but the platform around Invictus can also be used to make Harry look indispensable again. This is where the argument about consequences becomes important. The original commentary says that if King Charles genuinely objected to Harry's behaviour, he has had many chances to show it. Harry has criticised the press, the royal household, the First Amendment, security decisions, and at times has seemed willing to comment on political matters in ways that traditional working royals would never be allowed to do. Yet the public has not seen a decisive institutional response. Titles remain. Website pages remain. Invitations and private channels appear to remain. That silence feeds the belief that Harry is being protected. It may also simply reflect a king trying to avoid escalating a family war. But perception matters. If the public sees no consequences, many will conclude that the monarchy is tolerating behaviour from Harry that would never be tolerated from anyone else. The Highgrove meeting narrative fits directly into that suspicion. According to reporting discussed in the original material, King Charles, Harry, and Meghan were part of a private meeting that was described in some commentary as cloak and dagger, with only a very small circle supposedly aware in advance. Katie Nicholl, speaking in a mainstream royal media setting, framed the secrecy as significant. The reported idea was that the king wanted to show that a meeting could happen quietly, without taxpayer-funded security, without leaks, and without drama. On paper, that is a powerful message. It would suggest that father and son can meet privately if everyone behaves responsibly. It would also suggest that Harry's security argument is not the barrier he claims it is. But critics of the official narrative do not believe the meeting could have been that spontaneous or that narrowly known. The practical questions are obvious. King Charles has personal security, Highgrove has staff and security. The Metropolitan Police and Royal Protection arrangements exist around the king. The king's diary is managed. The Queen's movements are managed. Harry's movements would require drivers, security planning, and staff awareness. Meghan's presence, if she was there, would raise further logistical questions. So when a story suggests that almost nobody knew until the last moment, critics hear a media line rather than reality. Their argument is not that every aide knew every detail. It is that a meeting involving a monarch and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex cannot happen like an ordinary family dropping in for tea. Even if the circle was deliberately kept small, the meeting still required planning, protection, and coordination. The more revealing part is why such secrecy would be necessary at all. A healthy family does not usually need to stage meetings as if they are sensitive diplomatic operations. But after interviews, documentaries, memoirs, claims, counterclaims, briefings, lawsuits, and years of mistrust. Even a private cup of tea becomes politically loaded. If the Sussexes are seen entering or leaving, the image becomes a story. If they stay at a royal residence, that becomes a story.
Look, it is no accident that you've got Princess Anne in South Korea, and then 24 hours later, it's announced that Invictus is being hosted in South Korea. Harry never left this institution. It's one rule for him and one rule for everyone else. And he is being allowed, encouraged, and given the royal stamp of approval to behave like this.
If Meghan is photographed near the king, that becomes a story. If the children are mentioned, that becomes a story. If Charles's health is discussed, that becomes a story. Every detail has value, and everyone involved knows it. That is why critics are so skeptical when the meeting is presented as a simple sign of family healing. It may be that Charles genuinely wants to see his son. It may be that illness has made him more reflective. It may be that he wants a relationship with Archie and Lilibet. Those are human desires, and they should not be dismissed. But the monarchy cannot treat Harry and Meghan as only family members, because they are also public figures who have monetized their royal experience. Every private step toward them creates public meaning. A father can forgive. A king has to think about precedent. That is where Charles's personal instincts may conflict with the institution's long-term interests. The security issue remains the central practical gate. Harry wants a level of protection that, in his view, reflects the threat against him and his family. Critics say he wants the status and visible protection of royal life without returning to the duties that justify it. The public argument often becomes emotional. A sick father wants to see grandchildren, a son wants to come home, a family should not be separated by bureaucracy. But the institutional argument is colder. If Harry receives royal accommodation, royal policing, official coordination, and soft public handling whenever he visits, then the late Queen Elizabeth's no half in, half out settlement starts to weaken. The palace may insist nothing has changed, yet if the public sees Harry using royal spaces and government-backed platforms while building private commercial ventures elsewhere, the old boundary becomes harder to defend. This is also why the discussion of Buckingham Palace accommodation matters. Some reporting suggested Harry might stay in a royal residence, while critics argued that this was never realistic. The issue is not only where he sleeps, it is what the sleeping arrangement represents. A hotel makes him look private. A palace makes him look restored. A palace room suggests acceptance, access, and status.
What I found so interesting was that it was ultimately the king who managed to pull off this 11th hour meeting, cloak and dagger. So I was told that no one knew about it apart from the king, Meghan and Harry. There was a call made from Highgrove because Camilla and the king spend their weekends often separately, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. It's not as strange as it sounds. And the king called the queen and said, this meeting is going to happen. They're on their way. She jumped into the car, didn't tell anyone her...
It could also create security implications and raise questions about whether the king is quietly rebuilding Harry's position. Even a small courtesy can become a symbol, and symbols are the language of monarchy. The second major theme is King Charles's role as defender of the faith. The original source strongly criticizes the king's visit to Cambridge Central Mosque, especially because the mosque is also known for its eco-friendly design, a subject close to Charles's long-standing environmental interests. It is important to separate the facts from the criticism. A British monarch can visit a mosque. A modern king in a diverse country will naturally meet people from many faiths. Interfaith engagement is not automatically a betrayal of Christianity. But critics argue that Charles has been much more visibly enthusiastic about interfaith and environmental projects than about actively championing the Church of England in ordinary parish life. The constitutional point is real. King Charles is not merely a symbolic head of state. He is supreme governor of the Church of England, and at his coronation he swore religious oaths tied to the established church. That gives his public religious posture significance beyond personal preference. The criticism in the source material is that Charles often appears to describe himself in a broader multi-faith context, sometimes using language that emphasizes faith in general rather than the specific Christian settlement he inherited. To supporters, this is exactly what a modern monarch must do: hold together a country of many religions and none, while respecting the Christian constitutional framework. To critics, it looks like dilution. They believe he wants the prestige of the coronation oath while gradually softening what it means. The source claims that when searching public records, the last comparable voluntary visit by Charles to a Christian church community appeared to date back to December 2022, excluding Christmas, Easter, coronation events, royal maundy, and other formal obligations. That claim would need careful verification before being stated as settled fact, but as an argument, it explains the anger. Critics are not objecting simply because Charles visited a mosque. They are asking whether he shows the same voluntary energy toward ordinary Christian communities. Ceremonial church attendance is part of the job.
We've been left with lots of propaganda that King Charles is poorly with cancer and wants to see his grandchildren. And then we all think, oh, we can't criticise him. I'll go back to my point. I wish him a full and speedy recovery, but I don't want his cancer being used as a tool to almost gaslight the public. So they have to, unwittingly allow Harry and Meghan back in. And then everyone thinks he's definitely not got his taxpayer-funded security. Look, they are not being truthful.
What they are looking for is visible choice. A king choosing to sit with parish volunteers, choosing to elevate Christian communities outside the usual calendar, choosing to defend the church culturally as well as constitutionally. This debate reflects a wider anxiety about Britain's identity. For some people, the monarchy's Christian role is not just a religious technicality. It is part of the country's legal and cultural inheritance. Even people who are not personally religious may still see the Church of England connection as part of Britain's public architecture. When that connection feels weakened, they worry that something larger is being lost. Continuity, shared language, moral confidence, and the sense that the crown stands for a specific historical settlement rather than a vague ceremony of inclusion. Others would argue the opposite, saying that a monarch who fails to recognize religious diversity would weaken national unity. The tension is not easy to resolve, and Charles has spent much of his adult life trying to position himself as a bridge. But bridges can frustrate people on both sides. To some traditionalists, he looks too eager to move away from the church. To some secular critics, the established church itself already looks outdated. The Cambridge Mosque visit therefore becomes more than a local engagement. It becomes a symbol of Charles's monarchy. The mosque's environmental credentials connect with his climate priorities. The interfaith element connects with his long-standing desire to be seen as a king for all communities. The public relations message is one of cohesion, dialogue, and mutual respect. The critical reading is very different. Critics see a king who is comfortable amplifying other faith institutions while seeming less willing to act as an energetic defender of his own established church. They see a monarch who speaks often about community but avoids the harder cultural fights that many Christians believe are now urgent. The original discussion also points toward Britain's relationship with Arab states and the monarchy's diplomatic caution around Israel. The argument made there is that some royal visits are described as diplomatically sensitive while others are treated as normal engagement. That is a broad geopolitical issue and should be handled carefully because royal travel is usually shaped by government advice, foreign policy, security, and long-standing diplomatic convention. Still, it reinforces the source's wider frustration.
And that immediately made me ask questions. The older I get, the more I realise I am so grateful to my ADHD for just hopping around left, right and centre, because straight down the rabbit hole was I to find out when was the last time King Charles did this for a Christian church. Not Christmas, not Easter, not the coronation, not royal maundy. Those are constitutional duties. They happen because they have to happen.
Critics feel that the palace uses sensitivity as an explanation in some contexts, while embracing other relationships that also carry political weight. For them, Charles's interfaith approach is not neutral. It sits inside a larger pattern of diplomacy, money, influence, and public messaging. The third major theme is the media machine around Harry and Meghan. This is where Rob Shooter's contribution in the original conversation becomes useful, because he approaches the story through the business of publicity. His central point is simple. The mainstream media is not built only to discover truth. It is built to attract attention and make money. Newspapers, television shows, magazines, podcasts, and digital platforms need stories that keep people returning. The Sussexes provide exactly that. They are a continuing serial drama with new episodes. A meeting here, a leak there, a possible reconciliation, a security dispute, a business launch, a public appearance, a palace reaction, a William silence, a Meghan absence. It functions like a soap opera, and the media knows it. That does not mean every journalist is lying or every story is false. It means incentives shape coverage. A serious but complex story may matter more, yet a royal family conflict will often perform better. Editors understand which headlines move traffic. Producers understand which clips create debate. Commentators understand that Harry and Meghan still generate strong reactions from supporters and critics alike. The media does not necessarily need to love Harry. It simply needs the story to stay alive. If rehabilitation gets clicks, the press will run rehabilitation. If Backlash gets clicks, the press will run Backlash. If a father-son Thor gets clicks, that becomes the next episode. Rob Shooter's point about image making is also important. He argues that publicity can still change public perception, even when independent commentators believe the public has already made up its mind. Advertising and celebrity culture work because repetition works. A brand can fail in one lane and return in another. A celebrity can be rejected in one role but embraced in a role the public already understands.
This is a remarkable contrast. Now, before anyone twists my words, let me be clear. Yes, he can visit a mosque. We all know he loves interfaith. Goodness me, rams it down our throat like he does the importance of a blimmin' field mouse. But there's a difference between meeting people from every faith and remembering your job, the number one, numero uno, Chucky, is the church.
That is why some strategists may believe Harry can be returned to the image of the cheeky, goofy, mischievous prince many Britons remember from years ago. He may not be credible as a serious statesman or global thought leader, but he may still be marketable as informal, wounded, funny, human, and emotionally familiar. This is where the James Corden appearance becomes part of the strategy. Harry's recent appearances have often leaned into informality. He can joke, he can talk about sport, he can make himself look accessible, he can remind people of the old Harry who seemed spontaneous and relatable before the memoir, the interviews, and the accusations against his family. Critics say this is a deliberate attempt to overwrite the more damaging version of Harry with the earlier public character. The contradiction is that Harry spent years complaining about being reduced to a less serious role inside the palace narrative, yet now some of his public rehabilitation appears to rely on the same old persona. There is also a clear difference between Harry and Meghan in this strategy. Harry can potentially be softened through nostalgia. Meghan is harder for the media machine to repackage because British public opinion around her is more polarized and because her projects have been judged more harshly. Spotify ended, Netflix has been mixed. The lifestyle brand, as ever, has not yet become the major cultural force its launch suggested it wanted to be. Some products sold quickly, but critics argue that scarcity and curiosity are not the same as durable success. Meghan's public image is also closely tied to the accusations and grievances of the last several years. Harry can be presented as a son trying to come home. Meghan is often presented by critics as the reason he left. Whether that framing is fair or not, it is powerful. That may explain why some commentators believe Meghan is being kept lower in the frame while Harry is pushed forward. If the goal is to make the public accept a limited Harry return, the easiest route is not to sell the Sussexes as a couple. It is to sell Harry as a familiar royal figure with a veteran's cause, a wounded family story, and a desire to reconnect. Meghan's role can be described as supportive, private, or focused on the children. Her absence becomes useful because it lowers the temperature. She does not have to be rehabilitated immediately if Harry can be softened first. But the counter-argument is strong. Many independent commentators believe the public has already seen too much. They point to Harry's memoir, the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the claims about family members, the security fights, the court battles, and the repeated sense that private royal life has been turned into content. They argue that no amount of mainstream media softening can erase the record. They also point to business outcomes. If Harry and Meghan were truly as beloved and commercially powerful as their press sometimes suggested, the ventures would have performed better. The fact that so many have struggled is taken as evidence that the public is not buying the rebrand. Still, the media machine should not be underestimated. Rob Shooter's comparison to major consumer brands is useful because it reminds us that success is not always about need or merit. People can be persuaded to buy what they did not ask for. A product can be relaunched. A personality can be reframed. A failed strategy can be replaced by a more emotionally appealing one. Harry does not need everyone to forgive him. He only needs enough people to feel curious, nostalgic, or sympathetic. If the palace, the mainstream press, and Invictus all create an atmosphere of service, family, and reconciliation, that may be enough to shift part of the audience. The original discussion also touches on how journalists handle legally sensitive stories. The Charlotte Griffiths anecdote about an alleged incident involving Harry and a pill is an example of the kind of story that mainstream outlets may handle cautiously because of legal risk. The broader point is that journalism often uses indirect language, careful phrasing, and coded descriptions when lawyers are involved. Words such as erratic, difficult, tricky, or concerning can carry more meaning than they appear to carry. That matters because the public often sees only the polished surface of a story. Behind the surface are legal reviews, editorial calculations, access concerns, and commercial pressures. Some stories are pushed hard, others fade quickly. That does not always mean the story was false. Sometimes it means it became too risky, too complicated, or too inconvenient for the outlet's business interests. This helps explain why critics are so frustrated. They believe the public is being shown a narrow version of the Harry story. The veteran advocate, the homesick son, the cheeky prince, the man who wants peace. They believe the sharper questions are softened or ignored. What about accountability? What about accusations made against the royal family that were never proven? What about the damage to William and Catherine? What about the burden placed on the late Queen in her final years? What about the commercial use of royal titles? What about political comments made by someone still tied to the monarchy? What about the security implications of wanting official protection while operating as a private celebrity? Those questions do not disappear because a magazine runs a smiling photo. The tension around William is perhaps the most important future issue. Charles may want family contact, but William will inherit the consequences. William's approach appears colder, more disciplined, and more final. He is not only Harry's brother, he is the future king. He has to think about Catherine, their children, the monarchy's credibility, and the precedent set by any partial Sussex return. If Charles opens a private door, William may still keep the institutional door shut. That could create a two-track monarchy. Charles attempting personal reconciliation in the twilight of his reign, and William quietly refusing to let Harry near the working structure of the future crown. The Wales children matter here as well. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are growing up under the shadow of what happened between William and Harry. The palace will not want another heir and spare tragedy. It will not want a younger sibling to build an identity around resentment. It will not want public family conflict to become the defining story of the next generation. That makes Harry's continued public drama more than a personal embarrassment. It becomes a warning. William and Catherine are building the next phase of the monarchy around stability, privacy, and carefully limited exposure. Harry represents the danger of grievance becoming a career. This is why every apparent step toward Harry's return receives such intense scrutiny. If he comes back for Invictus in Birmingham, is he there as a private founder of a charitable event or as a royal figure with soft official backing? If he meets Charles, is it a family meeting or the first stage of a managed rehabilitation? If he travels to South Korea through Invictus, is that sport and service or royal adjacent diplomacy? If the press writes warmly about him, is that organic sympathy or a carefully fed narrative?
Never ever forget that the press is not there to be reporters. It's to make money. It is a profit-run business, whether that be your favorite TV show or your favorite newspaper. I've worked at these places, and the bottom line is the most important, not the best story. I've been the boss of magazines, of outlets, where someone's come in my office with a terrific story, and no one's going to read it. And I know that. And another staff has walked in with a really dull story about Kim Kardashian's bottom that we've done 20 times. That's going to get me hits. And so there's a little bit here of a game going on in the press.
The palace may prefer ambiguity because ambiguity gives flexibility, but ambiguity also breeds suspicion. There is also a question of what Harry actually wants. Does he want privacy or does he want status? Does he want family or does he want public restoration? Does he want security because of genuine threat or because security visibly confirms rank? Does he want to serve veterans or does he need Invictus to keep him relevant? The fairest answer may be that several things can be true at once. Harry may genuinely care about Invictus and also benefit from it. He may genuinely miss his father and also understand the public value of being seen near him. He may genuinely worry about safety and also want the symbolic protection of royal treatment. Human motives are rarely clean. But the monarchy cannot operate only on emotional complexity. It has to make decisions the public can understand. Meghan's role remains the unresolved piece. Some reports suggest she supports Harry reconnecting with his English son. Critics interpret that support through the lens of brand strategy, arguing that Meghan's lifestyle and media ventures gain credibility whenever the Sussexes appear closer to the royal family. A California lifestyle brand attached to a distant duchess is one thing. A brand attached to a duchess whose husband is visibly back in conversation with the king is another. Royal proximity creates glamour, curiosity, and legitimacy. That does not prove Meghan's motives are cynical, but it explains why critics watch the timing so closely. If reconciliation stories increase whenever commercial projects need momentum, suspicion will follow. The monarchy's problem is that it cannot fully control the Sussex story without making choices it may not want to make. If Charles removes Harry and Meghan more aggressively from official spaces, he risks looking cruel, especially while ill and while grandchildren are involved. If he keeps them close enough to preserve family ties, he risks looking weak and inconsistent. If he allows Harry to appear at high-profile charitable or veteran events in Britain, he risks reviving the half-in, half-out debate. If he blocks him, he risks another round of grievance.
Newspapers, the TV shows are making billions each year, feeding us what we want to read or what they want us to read. And the only reason they want us to read here is, I find often, they don't have a horse in this game. They just want the winner. They just want the horse that's going to win, because that's the horse that's going to make them the most money. When Diana and Charles broke up, there were conversations at the big outlets. Whose side do we take? Who's going to make us more money? Not who's right. Not who do we trust here, but who's going to make us more money. And it's a horribly cynical way to...
there is no clean option because the boundary was never only administrative. It is emotional, symbolic, commercial, and political all at once. That is why the King's religious role and the Harry question belong in the same broader conversation. Both are about what Charles believes monarchy should be. Is it a firm constitutional institution with clear limits rooted in established church duty and restraint? Or is it a softer, more inclusive, more personal monarchy that tries to hold everyone together even when the boundaries blur? Charles has always seemed drawn to bridge building, whether between religions, environmental causes, communities, or family members. But bridge building can look noble in theory and dangerously vague in practice. The public wants to know where the lines are. What does a non-working royal lose when he leaves? What does defender of the faith mean in a multi-faith country? What consequences follow when royal status is used commercially? What is private forgiveness and what is institutional permission? The Rob Shooter discussion ends on a realistic warning. Independent media may be growing, but the mainstream machine is still extremely powerful. YouTube channels, podcasts, Substacks, and independent commentators can challenge narratives more effectively than ever before. They can slow down a rebrand. They can preserve receipts. They can remind audiences of details that glossy profiles leave out. But they are still competing against established outlets with enormous reach, legal teams, celebrity access, and decades of influence. Harry's rehabilitation may fail, but it will not fail simply because critics know the counter-argument. It will fail only if the broader public refuses the emotional story being sold. So the next phase will be crucial. Watch Invictus, watch Birmingham, watch South Korea, watch whether Harry's travel continues to overlap with royal and government priorities. Watch whether Meghan remains out of view while Harry is softened. Watch whether royal website language changes. Watch whether palace accommodation is offered or denied. Watch whether Charles's team allows stories of warmth to circulate while William's team stays silent. Watch whether the media uses words like healing, home, service, family, and duty more often around Harry. Those words are not accidental. They are the vocabulary of restoration. And watch King Charles. His choices will show whether he sees the monarchy as a guarded institution or as a family network that can absorb almost anything.
And so could Harry go back to that cheeky? That's what they're gambling on. If you watch the James Corden interview, if you watch him in Birmingham at the Invictus Games setup, that's the strategy. I'm not sure if it will work or not, but I know this. We've seen the fingerprints. We've done this ourselves. They're going to lean in to Madonna singing like a prayer. They're going to lean into Harry being foolish. They're going to lean into Harry being a clown. It could work. Maybe it isn't going to work, but it's going to be really fun to watch.
His defenders will say he is trying to be compassionate, modern, inclusive, and human. His critics will say he is weakening the very boundaries that protect the crown. The truth may be somewhere in between, but the consequences will not be soft. If Harry is allowed to hover near royal life without returning to royal discipline, the public will notice. If Charles continues to emphasize interfaith symbolism, while traditionalists feel the Church of England is neglected, the public will notice that too. If the media keeps presenting carefully managed narratives as spontaneous family moments, more people will become skeptical. At the center of all of it is the same uncomfortable question. What does royal duty mean when the benefits survive longer than the obligations? Prince Harry's entire post-royal life has revolved around that question. King Charles's reign is now being tested by it. Invictus gives Harry a noble platform. The royal website gives him lingering status. The press gives him continuing drama. The king may give him private access. Meghan may gain indirect credibility from any sign of reconnection. But the public is being asked to accept a very delicate distinction, that Harry is out when accountability is discussed, yet somehow still close enough when prestige, protection, and global attention are useful. That distinction is becoming harder to sell. For now, the official story will likely remain cautious. There will be talk of family, illness, privacy, charity, veterans, service, interfaith respect, and national cohesion. But beneath those softer words the harder political reality remains. The monarchy survives through trust, restraint, and clear roles. If those roles blur too much, every event becomes suspect. A meeting becomes a plot. A charity announcement becomes a diplomatic signal. A mosque visit becomes a constitutional argument. A media appearance becomes a rehabilitation strategy. That is the environment Charles is now ruling in, and it is the environment Harry helped create. The next few years will show whether the palace can contain it, or whether the Sussex question will keep pulling the monarchy back into the very drama it claims to have moved beyond.